and also a contributor and liaison to the Hyperledger Fabric community, where I do contributions. I also help to define the roadmap for what we're going to be putting into Fabric. So first off, thanks Dennis, thanks for the introduction. Thank you all for being here Friday afternoon. My wife wouldn't even listen to me on a Friday afternoon, so I really appreciate you all here. A lot of new faces from when we were here in November, so this is really good. Some old faces, so not old faces, but faces I recognize.
Saggy
Sorry, I was looking at you, Dennis. No.
It's okay, I'm used to it.
So some of this may be repetitive, but we're absolutely going to get into some really cool new stuff. Andy is going to show exactly a perfect use case for blockchain around supply chain. So first, what I want to do is I kind of want to level set everybody. So, you know, folks have kind of a very different mindset of what blockchain is, how you start it, what's good, what's bad, what's different, and what we're actually trying to solve. So I'm going to start just from the very ground floor and try to slowly raise the tide so all of our boats kind of get to that point to where Andy shows us some really cool stuff. And then afterwards, I'll close out on you know, how, as I take my community hat off and put my IBM hat on, how IBM can actually help and show some of the cool stuff there. I'll be around afterwards. I know Andy will be with me. So if there's any questions or anything, we're going to do the best we can to keep this within an hour. But I know both of us get very excited about this, so we may have a tendency to run a little over. So beat me, whoever is our timekeeper, to keep on time. So with that, let's get rolling in here. So what are we doing, right? We want to talk a little bit about blockchain. First and foremost, Bitcoin. Anybody heard of Bitcoin? Yeah, all right. So usually when you hear blockchain, you get one of two responses. Oh, that's Bitcoin. One, false. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency or an application that is built on top of blockchain technology. It's the most popular, it's been around the longest, created in 2008 or came alive in 2008 around the fall of all the financial districts and everything that happened, trying to remove that centralized authority and get out of all of the mess that we had. So when you talk about blockchain, you start to get this very interesting dilemma. You get your Bitcoin maximists or evangelists or you know, Bitcoin is all that there is in blockchain, and then you get people that are, well, there's more to it. You know, let's actually look at blockchain and not the cryptocurrency space and see what that underlying technology can do to really alter so many different sectors of the world. I mean, you think of, I'll show a slide in a little bit, but all of the different things, you know, it's not often that you could say, hey, I'm in a real world-changing technology. I'm here to actually change and improve things of the world. This is it. And I mean, I've been with, yeah, I got gray hair, 20 years with IBM. This is one of the most exciting things I've ever worked on because it really is a stamp and a change in how we do things as a world. Now, with that said, comes the second question. Okay, blockchain is my answer. What is my question? A lot of people ask that, right? There's an iced tea company that put blockchain in their name. They have nothing to do with blockchain. They just put the name in there and their stock went up 500% a day. That's how hot this stuff is right now. And that's, you know, that's why we're in it, right? I mean, it's really interesting. It's a really interesting dilemma. So, first and foremost, Bitcoin is not blockchain. Kind of an interesting side point that I'll say now instead of later. IBM started out in blockchain, investigating it through our Emerging Technology Institute, which I was part of. And it was, we were like, you know, seeing little glimmers of, hey, this looks pretty cool. What is this? So we actually started with a incentivized platform. There's a particular one, it wasn't Bitcoin. We knew Bitcoin immediately was going to be a no game for us just because of the complete anonymous factor behind it. Our businesses, our IBM as a whole usually goes after enterprise businesses and things of that nature. So we started down the path of a particular tokenized or incentive-based platform. We ran into a ton of problems. And we just weren't getting the responses that we needed. And as we started to field test some of the things that we were trying to do, our enterprise businesses said, no, we need more of a trusted, permissioned type of private blockchain. And now when you hear that, that immediately says to a lot of folks, well, that's not blockchain. I disagree wholeheartedly with that. Blockchain is about the transparency and sharing of data to actually get to an end game where you have value add across your markets and even across industries. And you'll start to recognize that as I talk a little bit more on the different factors. Now, am I saying tokens are bad or an incentivized base? No, not at all. I mean, there is absolutely a space for that type of blockchain network. You know, I think Ethereum's mainnet is fantastic. It's a quick, easy way to get started with just understanding of blockchain, because you can bring up a node, attach, you can do, create some smart contracts and Solidity and get going. And I think that's cool. But when you start looking at some of the enterprises, they're like, well, I need to kind of know who I'm in. It doesn't mean that I'm authorizing it, and it doesn't mean that you can't start to create through transaction certifications and things like that, the space of an anonymous factor in there. It's all your option on how you set it up, and that's really deep, and I can talk to folks if they're interested about that later, but it's an interesting factor. So now I'm going to kind of back up out of the weeds again a little bit. What are we here for? So I now completely have my split head actually of Hyperledger Community and IBM. When IBM first started getting into it, we quickly recognized this cannot be a proprietary type of technology. We can't hold this within, because this is something that is going to be changing the world and is already changing the world. So it needs to have the world enabled to make architectural design decisions and actually implement the code base. Plus, this stuff is flying. I mean, it's going so fast, it's unbelievable. In order to create something that is good for the world, can be governed by the world, we need a body, an independent body that can actually do this. So the first iteration that IBM, Intel, DAH, and a couple other groups started to come up with after we investigated that incentivized platform that I mentioned, we created, in 3 months, we created what was called Open Blockchain. That technology we thought was just the cat's meow at the time, man. That was smoking. It was great. We did it 3 months. Look at this. This is awesome. We went to the Linux Foundation and said, we need help. We need to put this out in the open source community, since we have kind of a small POC type of thing, and see what happens. And they said, that's awesome. We love it. There's a group of people over there that want to be involved. So we all got together. Boy, they just tore the bejesus out of that code. And they had great feedback. So it was phenomenal that we got the help from the world and the community. We had created these nodes that did everything: consensus algorithms, validation, endorsements. Everything was built into every single node for every single transaction. You had to do that. Anybody that thinks performance immediately sees the flaw in that thought and pattern. So after that, we ripped everything apart with the community's help. 159 different contributors and folks involved in it, companies, I should say companies, not contributors, put code into this, helped us drive it, so we have a distributed manner. All the nodes are distributed, the components themselves are distributed with Fabric. Really good. It's really good technology and a good direction. So what are we trying to do? Hyperledger is all about business networks. And that's what IBM, Intel, Cisco, all these large names, right? They're into enterprise business. So we're trying to work with businesses. And what do businesses have to do? You don't sit in a little silo and control everything and, I'll just give you this little piece, but give it back to me real quick. And you have to spread this stuff out. You have to work with your customers and your retailers and your suppliers on the other end. So it just screams immediately, for a lot of cases, that blockchain is something that could be really efficient in helping that return on investment by getting the information flow, being able to see this information at a wide area without really much hesitation or requirements for things. There's checks and balances, and I'm happy to talk about that stuff. So what are we doing with blockchain? we're taking assets and we're just trading assets along the line. I mean, just from one person to another. This is adding value as you do it, right? There's usually some little markup or something like that in a normal supply chain type of thing. But this actual trading is creating what we call wealth. And when you start to grow this wealth of this trading, you start to create a market. There's a lot of markets that are defined. I'm telling you, there are a lot of markets that are not defined. I was just in San Francisco for the last week and talking with a bunch of startups. And startups, which IBM is traditionally terrible at working with, are coming to us asking, how can IBM help? How can we get started with this stuff? Because if you think about what I just talked about with that sharing across big data, big companies, big global reach, everything like that, IBM's perfect for that. IBM has a fantastic hand in global reach, in global data centers, and helping to do this. We're learning how to work with startups better. The cool thing is you have folks like Nick, 20 years old, that can go out there and pound the bricks and talk to the young folks better than gray hair like Dennis. No, I'm just kidding. So anyway,
You did it to me.
so what is the problem that what is one of the major problems? The problem is really that sharing of data. It's very expensive, and it's the one key that I always love to kind of really hit on. You can go to the next slide. The one thing I really like to hit on is the security level. You really, if you think about what blockchain is and how the ability or lack of ability that you have to actually corrupt the chain is amazing. You would have to be able to act on every single node at exactly the same second to be able to corrupt it.